Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Karavacharam Purnavadi Purnatha, Mande Shri Guru Bhagavata. Yes, okay. So welcome back to the final session of our discussion on Vaisnava Epistemology. So in the last two classes, just to do a quick recap, we have discussed about the different ways of gaining knowledge and why we should gain knowledge to attain the highest perfection of life. And we primarily discussed what a pramana is, which gives perception to valid knowledge or perception to reality, yathartha anubhava. And we discussed the main 10 pramanas, which are primarily accepted by Vedic scholars. So, of these 10, 3 are accepted as the most prominent by Sri Jiva Goswami, and he gives all this analysis and details in his Sandarbha. Of these 3, Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda, these are the 3, and we discussed about Pratyaksha in a class before yesterday, and we discussed in quite some detail about Anumana yesterday. Okay. And we gave a small introduction. We discussed a little bit about Shabda Pramana, and we saw the definition that Sri Jiva Goswami gives to define what Shabda means. So just to quickly recap. He says that one, Shabda is that by which one can become learned in all subjects. It imparts ultimate wisdom. It purifies sensory perception. The nature of Shabda is that it is self-manifest and it is beyond the purview of time. It's a total corpus of all authoritative statements. It's the basis of all traditional knowledge. And Shabda is none other than the revealed scripture known as the Vedas, who has no human author, it has no beginning in time, the cause of all, and it is created again and again. Well, it's not created, but it's manifest. The Vedic knowledge is not created, it's not written by anybody, it's Apaurushaya Shabda. So it manifests at certain amount of time. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the conversation between Krishna and Uddhava, it's mentioned that at the end of Brahma's day, the Vedic knowledge is lost during annihilation. So Krishna speaks or he imparts the Vedic knowledge to Lord Brahma at the start of every creation. So this is manifest, the Vedas are manifest, Shabda is manifest. Then the Vedas are presumed free from faults such as delusion and are always accepted as authoritative. They are the infallible means for correct knowledge, and only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord one can accept it. And there is no means for acquiring reliable knowledge apart from Shabda. And we discussed this statement in some detail yesterday. Okay. So we will see some more characteristics of Shabda. So Vedas reveal the Supreme Lord. So there are several statements which are there from the Shruti itself, which says that only by the Shabda Pramana, only by the Vedic method, the Supreme Lord, the cause of all causes, can be known. The whole endeavor of human society is that they are inquisitive, as we saw in class before yesterday. Inquisitiveness means to determine what is the cause of all causes, what is the root cause, what is the reason behind all this. And the cause of all causes is the Supreme Lord. And he can be revealed, or he is revealed only through Shabda Pramana. So in Rig Veda, it's mentioned, Vacha Virupa Nityaya. O Virupa, glorify the Lord with the eternal Vedas. The Vedas glorify the Lord. Shastra Yonitva, it's from Vedanta Sutra. We have to understand God through Shastra, Supreme Lord through Shastra. Then Shuteshri Shabda Mulatva. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being inconceivable to an ordinary man, can be understood only through the evidence of the Vedic injunctions. Otherwise, the Supreme Lord cannot be understood. So we have lots of material to cover today, so I'll be going a bit faster. And this is from Hitopadesh. Shastra is the eye of illumination for everyone as it removes various doubts and reveals invisible objects. Therefore, one who lacks knowledge of Shastra is surely blind. Whatever knowledge he may have or he may think he might possess is all material. It cannot help him ultimately. So if we have to remove various doubts, various uncertainties within our mind and reveal those which are beyond our purview of the senses and our intelligence by our own efforts, then we have to resort to Shastra. So what's the validity of Shabda Pramana? It reveals knowledge of subjects which lies beyond our sense perception or inference. So several of these points which we'll discuss in this validity are already discussed. We discussed that yesterday. So I'll just quickly go through. It reveals knowledge of the subjects which is beyond Prataksha and Anumana. Okay. And one of the examples we saw was to determine who is the father of a child. The mother is the authority. Okay. Now by sense perception, one cannot find who is the father. Similarly, by logical inference, one cannot find who is the father. Everyone relies on such knowledge from Aptavakya in day-to-day life, even those who proudly declare that they have no faith in authority. This also we discussed yesterday. Said all the knowledge that we gain in our life is primarily Shabda Pramana only. It is Paurushaya Shabda, okay, from a person who is authority for that particular field of knowledge. Most of the knowledge that we gain is through Aptavakya, through Shabda Pramana. And once we have gained that knowledge, then we get enough experience to apply logic, to understand few things, and we have our senses to get very rudimentary or basic information of the world around us. Everyone's mental and intellectual development depends on sound vibration. This also we discussed yesterday, that how one who does not go through the process of education, his intellectual capabilities and mental capabilities remain hindered, and his worldview is different from one who has got exposure to the outside world, who has learned things through Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana is the most powerful tool for conveying knowledge from one person to another, especially if they are greatly separated by time or space, which is almost always the case in spiritual matters. So if we have to gain knowledge of something which is far off, which is very far from us, from which we are separated by time, means if we have to gain knowledge of something in the past, there is no other way than to rely on Shabda Pramana. Right? Now, if we have to learn something about the history of India or of the world, or what happened in World War I, World War II, what do we have? We do not have much to learn apart from Shabda Pramana. There is no Prataksha because the instances are not happening now. And there is not much use of logical conjecture also. By Anumana Pramana also, we cannot understand the facts as it happened. Only by Shabda Pramana we can understand the historical nature. Similarly, what will happen in the future, that also is imperceivable to our senses and to our intellect. That also can be understood only through Shabda Pramana. And in case of spiritual matters, we say that spiritual world is transcendent. Or spiritual world, not we say, but actually spiritual world is transcendental to this material world. So we are separated by space. We are separated by a huge amount of distance. It is said that even if we travel by the speed of mind, still we cannot approach the Supreme Lord. This verse will come in Isha Upanishad, we will discuss that. So even if we go by the speed of mind, we can just close our eyes and by think, and we will be somewhere in America. Or the mind travels so fast. Just by thinking of something, we go to that particular place. In the mind, not physically. But even if we travel like this in the speed of mind, still we cannot attain the Supreme Lord. But information about the Supreme Lord can be gained through Shabda Pramana. And Shabda is independent of other Pramanas and overrule them. So Shabda is not dependent on Prataksha, and Shabda is not dependent on Anumana, any of the other Pramanas. And it overrules them. So if something is visible to us through Prataksha, if we gain some knowledge which contradicts the Shabda Pramana, we must accept the Shabda Pramana. We saw a few examples of this yesterday, about the stool of the cow and the conch shell. Classic examples. Not limited in scope of the present time. Yes. And it saves time. If you approach an authority who already has that knowledge, then we do not have to resort to our prataksha or what we are doing, or what kind of, or how we gain our knowledge, and also to our logical conjunction. Just approach a person and gain that knowledge. If we approach a person who is an authority in that subject, we gain that knowledge, the knowledge is perfect, that's it. So Shabda Pramana saves time. Okay. Then only from Vedas Shabda we get knowledge about Avideya. So yesterday while discussing the Anumana Pramana, we discussed that Anumana Pramana does not give any knowledge about Avideya or what one is supposed to do in his life to attain the highest goal. But Shabda Pramana gives knowledge about Avideya. Animals never achieve spiritual realization from the knowledge gained by their senses or other pramanas. If we want to know that object which transcends everything and is the shelter of everything, whose nature no person can conceive or imagine, then only Vedas can be the source of our knowledge. So that knowledge or that object of knowledge, the prameya, pramana is supposed to reveal prameya. Pramana means how we gain knowledge, and then what is that knowledge? What is it supposed to reveal? The object of knowledge. That is prameya. So when the prameya transcends everything, when it transcends the whole material purview, and then that can be understood only through Shabda Pramana. And that which is the shelter of everything, again, Shabda Pramana only, and which no person can conceive or imagine. Spiritual nature cannot be conceived or imagined. So Srila Prabhupada says, in spite of his being unlimited, he has subjected himself to being known from the authoritative scriptures like the Vedic literatures. As it is said, Shabda Moolatvad, he can be known through the Shabda Brahma or Vedic literature. Now, there might be a doubt or a question that the sound that we are hearing, it's material. The sound that we hear, Shabda Pramana, Shabda means sound, words. The sound that we are hearing is actually material, which is perceived through our gross sense, which is the ear, the subtle sense, the sense of hearing, which is processed in the mind. So, even though we say the Shabda is transcendental, but still the instruments that we are using to process Shabda and try to understand spiritual matter is all material. So how can transcendental words be understood? Through material senses, correct? Right now, when I'm speaking now I'm speaking, I'm moving my mouth with the tongue, and then it's creating some sound. And you all are hearing through your gross ear, right? Senses, the hearing sense. Although the transmission is happening between something which is gross and acceptance is happening with something which is gross, but still we say that Shabda is transcendental, and that is because the Supreme Lord himself has decided that he can be known through the Shabda Brahman, and because he is independent, he is the supreme cause, he is independent of everything, he has manifested his potency. The potency to reveal himself is present within the Vedic literatures. So although the transmission medium might look like it's material, but because the Supreme Lord has invested his potency, has invested his will that he can be understood through the Vedic literatures, this is called as transcendental vibration. Although the medium might be material, the sound is traveling through ether between the speaker and the hearer, but still, because the potency of the Lord is there, will of the Lord is there, this has the potency, the Shabda has the potency to reveal the Lord. Okay, that's why in Vedanta Sutra it's mentioned Shabda Moolatvad, he can be known through Shabda Brahma. Clear? According to the Vedanta Sutras, Shastra Yonitvad, the Supreme Lord is the author of all revealed scriptures, and all revealed scriptures are for knowing the Supreme Lord. Veda means knowledge that leads to the Lord. So Shastra Yonitvad, Yoni means the birthplace of something. Okay. So it does not mean that the Vedic literatures, again, various philosophers or various speculators, they twist the meaning of this sutra, and this Shastra Yonitvat means the Shastra, your Shastra itself says that the Supreme Lord is imagined. The Supreme Lord is imagined, and the birth of the Supreme Lord takes place from Shastra. Okay, but actually it is not. It's that the revelation of the Lord takes place from Shastra. It's not that the Lord is imagined from the Vedic literatures. We will not get into this in much detail because it's more, we have to go deeper into philosophy and try to understand all these things. But there are philosophers who can twist the meaning of Vedanta Sutra like this and then come to a very completely opposite conclusion. So Shastra Yonitvat basically means the place from which the Lord is revealed. It's not the birthplace of the Lord. So what's the conclusion? The absolute truth makes himself known by Shabda Pramana. Therefore, it is called Apaurushaya Shabda, revealed knowledge from a superhuman source. And it is Avaroha Pantha. It originated with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and it is received in disciplic succession from a bona fide guru. So the origin is the Supreme Lord, and how is the knowledge received? Through Avaroha Pantha, through descending method, through a bona fide spiritual master. Apaurushaya Shabda is therefore the perfect pramana because it is free from the four defects, because it comes in disciplic succession. Brahma is undoubtedly the speaker of the Vedic knowledge, but actually he was inspired by the Lord to receive such transcendental knowledge as it directly descends from the Lord. The Vedas are therefore called Apaurushaya, not imparted by any created being. Before the creation, the Lord was there, Narayana Avyaktat. And therefore, the words spoken by the Lord are vibrations of transcendental sound. So, in various scriptures also, it is said that Lord Brahma, he spoke the Vedas. From his ears, the Vedas manifest. But that does not mean that Lord Brahma created the Vedas. Okay. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kave Muhyantiyat Surya. The first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam itself says that the Lord imparted his transcendental knowledge onto the heart of Brahmaji. So this is then propagated by Lord Brahma in the material world. So Lord Brahma has two functions, two features. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it's mentioned that one is to create this universe. It's a secondary creator. The template is already given by the Lord. Then the Lord Brahma, as an engineer, he creates, he builds, he constructs this material world. And another main duty of Lord Brahma is to propagate the Vedic knowledge. Because the cause or the purpose of this material world is to liberate the living entities from the clutches of Maya. You will see another quote for this in the next couple of slides. So the purpose of Vedic literature is to liberate people. And Lord Brahma, being the constructor of this universe, his duty or his primary job is to propagate the Vedic literatures among all human beings, among all living entities. So that is why it is mentioned that Lord Brahma, through his ears, the Vedas are manifest. But actually, it's not that Lord Brahma is creating it, it's Lord Brahma is actually transmitting it. So how to verify that the Vedic knowledge is perfect? Vedas are self-evident because there is no higher source above them to approve or confirm their validity. Okay. It might look like a circular reasoning, but we will get into these details. By following Vedic standards of self-control, body and mind, which we receive from a Parampara Guru, one becomes peaceful, clear-headed, and fit to understand the highest purpose of life. So by following the Vedic standards, and again, we discussed this in yesterday's class also. By following the Vedic standards, what happens? Our senses, our purity, our senses are purified. The mind becomes free from contamination, and our body is controlled. Our mind is controlled. We give up the lower taste and we attain a higher taste. So this is Pratyakshavagavam, we can say to some extent, and Susukham Kartumavyam, where we get satisfaction and happiness by following the Vedic injunctions. So that proves that the Vedas, whatever is given in the Vedic literatures, whatever is received through Shabda Pramana actually works because we experience it in our lives. Okay. The authority of great saintly persons who achieve perfection by following Vedas. So our faith is increased, or we have faith, we have trust that Shabda Pramana is perfect by seeing the life of the great Acharyas, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and our own Srila Prabhupada, who have achieved perfection by following the Vedic literatures. So by authority of great saintly person, we can understand that the Vedas are perfect. What is given in Shabda Pramana or what is understood as Shabda Pramana is perfect. Compared to other scriptures, Vedas have more details, varieties, but they remain consistent. So there are other religious scriptures also, other religions also they have their scriptures, but Vedas have more details and they remain consistent. For example, in religions, different religions like Christianity or Islam, there is some information about God. But then what his name is, what are his features, what are his characteristics, where does he live, what are his activities, not mentioned. Okay. Or even if it's mentioned, very limited. But Vedas have more details about all these things. So again, it benefits us by giving us more to meditate on. It is more convincing. and they remain consistent, so they don't contradict. From all departments or from Vedas, all departments of knowledge are derived, both mundane as well as spiritual. Okay, so there is nothing which is beyond the purview of Vedic literatures. Everything that's required for material necessities can be gained from the Vedas, and of course, spiritual matters can be understood only by the Vedas. Even the demigods need the help of Vedas to understand the absolute truth. So, a quote for that. By absence of proof that Vedas have material origin. So, this is a proof by negation. It means because there is no proof that Vedas have material origin, therefore, by negation, we can understand it has spiritual origin. Because of these things, Shabda Pramana is perfect. Purpose of the Vedic literatures. The Lord wants all living entities who are his parts and parcels to live with him in the transcendental world. And for enlightening conditioned souls in the material world, all the Vedas and the revealed scriptures are there expressly to recall the conditioned souls back home, back to Godhead. Right? So, Lord Brahma propagates the Vedic literatures to fulfill the purpose. One purpose of this material world is so that the living entities can fulfill their contaminated desires. They can try to fulfill their desires of enjoying this material world, but that is not the ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose is that the Lord wants all the living entities to live with him in the transcendental world, and for that reason, he propagates the Vedic literatures through the agency of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma has this as the primary function, to propagate the Vedic literatures. So Vedas manifest from the Supreme Lord. Now there are a couple of verses, references which I have put here. So the four Vedas, namely the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda, are all emanations from the breathing of the great personality of Godhead. Nishvasitam. Asya Mahato Bhutasya Nishvasitam Etadyat. So Nishvasitam means he breathes out. He breathes out the Vedic literatures, which are Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Angirasa. Atharva Veda is also called as Atharva Angirasa Veda because Atharva Veda was propagated by Sumanta Muni or Angirasa Muni. The Yamadutas replied, that which is prescribed in the Vedas constitute dharma, the religious principles, and the opposite of that is irreligion. The Vedas are directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, and are self-born. This we have heard from Yamaraj. Vedo Narayana Sakshat. Vedic literatures came directly from the Supreme. So Krishna himself speaks to Uddhava and he says, by the influence of time, the transcendental sound of Vedic knowledge was lost at the time of annihilation. Therefore, when the subsequent creation took place, I spoke the Vedic knowledge to Brahma because I myself am the religious principles enunciated in the Vedas. No one can manufacture the Vedic principles. Okay. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavad pranitam. What is dharma? What is one supposed to follow? Is manifested by the Supreme Lord himself. So he spoke the knowledge to Brahma, which means that Brahma did not create the Vedic scriptures. They were manifested or they were propagated in this material world through him. Then transmission of the transcendental Vedic sound, the purpose of the creation. Lord Brahma spoke this to his eldest son Manu and the 7 great sages, the Saptarishis, headed by Bhrigu Muni, who then accepted the same knowledge from Manu. And then a list is given that from the forefathers headed by Bhrigu Muni and other sons of Brahma appeared many children and descendants, and they assumed different forms like demigods, demons, human beings, Gohekas, Siddhas, Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, and so on. And all of the many universal species, along with their respective leaders, appeared with different natures and desires generated from the 3 modes of material nature. Therefore, because of the different characteristics of the living entities within the universe, there are a great many Vedic rituals, mantras, and rewards. So, Vedic literature does not speak only about spiritual matter, it also speaks about mundane matters. Okay, and the idea is that by gradually following the Vedic scriptures, people accepting the Vedic scriptures and regulating their life according to the Vedas, they will gradually come or purify themselves from the lower modes, from ignorance to passion and from passion to goodness, and from goodness to pure goodness, from tamoguna to rajoguna, sattva and shuddha sattva. So there is like a ladder, there is like a gradual progress. And for those people who are in rajoguna, there are scriptures who resort to them, not to cultivate their rajoguna, but so that they can engage themselves properly to elevate themselves from rajoguna to the platform of sattva and then to shuddha sattva. So there are scriptures which resort to people who are in the mode of ignorance, and from there it tries to elevate person to the highest goal. Similarly, there are scriptures which are on the level of sattva guna, and they regulate the activities of those people on sattva guna and elevate them to shuddha sattva. So there is different gradation of people within this material world itself, and the Vedic literatures are so fulfilling or so encompassing that they accommodate all different varieties of living entities, human beings, demigods, like this. So because there are different characteristics of the living entities based on the modes of material nature, there are great many Vedic rituals, mantras and rewards. So in that way, it might seem that some of the Vedic literatures contradict the other injunctions given in the Vedas. But one who understands the actual purpose behind the Vedas, he knows that different Vedic injunctions are meant for different people on a different level. Okay, there are injunctions for those in Tamoguna, injunctions for those in Rajoguna, and injunctions for those in Sattoguna. And also how they can elevate themselves to Shuddha Sattva. So there are three broad divisions of the Vedas. The Vedas divided into three divisions ultimately reveal the living entity as pure spirit soul. The Vedic seers and mantras, however, deal in esoteric terms, and I am also pleased by such confidential descriptions. Okay, so three Kanda Vishaya, and we have heard this before. This is your Karma Kanda, then Jnana Kanda, and Upasana Kanda. So this is a category. The Vedas have three different categories. So this is what it is. Srila Prabhupada writes, in three departments of human knowledge disseminated by the Vedas, namely fruitive work, Karma Kanda, transcendental knowledge, Jnana Kanda, and devotional service, Upasana Kanda, Devarshi Narada inherited from his father Brahma, devotional service, whereas Daksha inherited from his father fruitive work, and Sanaka, Sanatana, etc. inherited from their father information about Jnana Kanda or transcendental knowledge. And that is how the Vedic knowledge is propagated. Okay. The Vipras are those who are expert in Karma Kanda, fruitive activities, guiding the society towards fulfilling the material necessities of life, whereas the Brahmanas are expert in spiritual knowledge of transcendence. So there is Vipra and then there is Brahmana. Vipras are expert in Karma Kanda rituals. So they also follow the Vedic literature, but they are focusing themselves only on Karma Kanda rituals. Okay. And the Brahmanas are those who know what is Brahman, who know what is transcendental. They are expert in spiritual knowledge. And above this, there is the Upasana Kanda. The culmination of Upasana Kanda is the devotional service of the Lord Vishnu. And when the Brahmanas achieve perfection, they are called Vaishnavas. So he gives these three categories of Vedic literatures, Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and Upasana Kanda. He says the Vipras are the ones who follow the Vedic literatures and are engaged in fruitive activities. They are Karma Kandis. And then those who know Brahman, specifically, who have expert in spiritual knowledge of transcendence, means those who are the impersonalists. They come to the level of Brahmana. But one who knows the perfection of transcendence, the supreme personality of Godhead, and his spiritual abode, the Vaikuntha planets in Golok Vrindavan, and by that knowledge they engage in devotional service of the Lord, they are the Brahmanas, who are called as Vaishnavas, who are the devotees of Lord Vishnu. So how the Vedas are propagated? So Krishna, he imparts the knowledge to Lord Brahma, who gives the knowledge to Narada, and Narada is the spiritual master of Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva divides the Vedas into four, which are technically called Shruti. We will see what is Shruti, Smriti, and Nyaya in some time. So he divides the Vedas. Vyasa means one who divides. So Veda Vyas means one who divides the Vedas in a structured manner. So Rig Veda contains different prayers to demigods, the different demigods, and to Lord Vishnu. Yajurveda is primarily for offering sacrifices, hymns for oblations. Samaveda have prayers and hymns in singing meter. So this music comes from Samaveda. And Atharvaveda has different details about maintenance of this body and the world, and also about destruction of this world. Then these are the constituents of the Vedic literature. So this is how the Vedic literatures were divided by Vedavyas. So before Vyasadeva divided the Vedas, all of them were together as one single whole. And the Brahmanas in previous ages, in Dwapar Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Satya Yuga, were so expert that they could understand the purpose of each of the mantra which is coming in the Vedic literatures. So when the spiritual master, he teaches the Shruti, the Vedic literature, the Vedic mantras to the disciple, because the disciple is so qualified and the Guru is so qualified, then along with listening, along with accepting the Vedic mantra, knowledge is revealed within his heart of which all mantras should be used for which all purposes, because they were so qualified. But in Kali Yuga, that is not possible. So, seeing the ill effects of Kali Yuga, seeing how the Brahmanas will get degraded, Srila Vyasadeva, he divided the Vedas into four: Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. And he gave the authority or the duty, the job of expanding or structurizing the Vedas furthermore to four of his disciples. Rig Veda was given to Paila Rishi, Yajurveda to Vaishampayana, Samaveda to Jaimini, and Atharva Veda to Sumantamuni or Angira. And then these great sages, they further divided the four Vedas into different branches, Shakha, based on different purposes. So Rig Veda has 21 branches, Yajurveda has 100 branches called as Shakha, Samaveda has 1000 branches, and Atharva Veda has 9 branches. And within the Vedic literature itself, there are four different categories: Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. We will discuss about this in the next slide, what they actually mean. So Rig Veda has 21 branches, and each of these branches have these four sections: Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishad, which are 21 in number. Similarly, for Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, 100 branches, 100 Samhitas, 100 Brahmanas, 100 Aranyakas, and 100 Upanishads, like this. Samaveda has 1000 branches, similarly 1000, and Atharva Veda has 9 branches, and similarly there are 9. So totally, if we see, if we add this, there are 1130 Samhitas, which includes all the four Vedas. So Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. In all of them, there are totally 1130 Samhitas. Similarly, 1130 Brahmanas, then Aranyakas and Upanishads. Of these, most of it is lost. We have only 11 Samhitas left, okay, from out of 1130. Only 18 Brahmanas portion is left out of 1130, 7 Aranyakas and 220 Upanishads. So this roughly corresponds to around 6% of the total Vedic literature which are propagated in the human society. Okay, so it constitutes only 6%. So 94% of it is lost. And this is one of the basis of Srila Jiva Goswami, why he says that Shruti, in this age, at this point of time, Shruti is not really, it's not possible to understand completely about the Supreme Lord just by the Shrutis. So therefore, we should resort to Smritis, the Itihasas and Puranas, which are more authentic or which complete the meaning of the Vedas. We will see some quotes for that also. So 94% of the Vedas are lost, only 6% is left. And over a period of time, as Kali Yuga progresses, even those Brahmanas who know these Vedas, they are not teaching them to their children. They are not teaching them to their disciples. The disciples what? No, they are not even, everybody is engaged in going through the schooling system and getting a job, either here or in America. So Brahmanas have left their Vedic culture. So many of the Shakas, many of the Vedas, the mantras which were present even 20 or 30 years ago, some of them have been lost over a period of time. So we hear stories that this particular Brahmana was there somewhere in Andhra Pradesh or in Tamil Nadu. He was the problem. He was the only person who knew this particular section of the Veda, this particular branch of the Veda, and this particular set of mantras, how the mantra should be pronounced, how the intonation should be. But now, because his son, he's working in US or whatever, he's not interested, that shaka or that branch of the Veda is lost. That set of mantra is lost. How it should be recited, how it should be utilized, it is lost. So like this, Vedas are being lost over a period of time. Samhitas. Samhitas basically are for those who are at the brahmacharya. Brahmachari period is where the brahmacharya means the first 25 years of a person's life. If we generally speaking, if we say a person lives for 100 years, the first 25 years is when he goes and takes shelter of a guru and learns from him the Vedic literatures. Okay, so Samhitas are taught to him. Samhitas are basically the Vedic mantras. At the initial point, to a brahmachari, the mantras are taught in different ways. Okay, and he memorizes all the mantras. How those mantras are utilized in a sacrifice, how those mantras should be used for fulfilling one's purpose, that it comes in the grihastha stage, and that is explained in the Brahmana portion of the Vedic literatures. So, in Samhitas, primarily Karmakanda or ritualistic section dealing with the sacrifices and rituals are taught. So, the mantras are taught at this point, not how the procedure is not taught, the mantras are taught at this portion. It's anthology of prayers, also known as mantra portion. Only the mantras are taught. And Brahmanas is specifically for grihasthas. This also pertains to Karmakanda. And the Brahmana portion corresponds to each Samhita and guides people to perform sacrificial rites by offering prose explanations of the method of using the mantras in the yajna or the sacrifice. Brahmachari who has learned those Samhitas during his Brahmachari time, he utilizes those mantras, and how to perform sacrifices is what is mentioned in the Brahmanas. So he combines these two and then he offers sacrifices during his Grihastha period to fulfill the necessities of his life. So that is the Karmakanda portion where he offers sacrifices for this particular purpose. Aranikas are for the Vanaprasthas and which deal with Upasana Kanda, worship section dealing with various kinds of meditation. And these are forest treaties. Aranya means forest. So Vanaprasthas, they should Panchasholvam Vanam Brajet. When you are 50 years old, you should give up your family life, your Grihastha life, not Grihastha life, but family life, all the duties that we perform in a Grihastha life. Then one should go to the forest. You can go with his wife also. So these are forest treaties and considered as supplements of the Brahmanas, which offer a different explanation of the rituals and contain powerful teachings. So these are considered as supplements of the Brahmanas, which basically means that those portions of the Brahmanas that are used as Karmakanda rituals, now there is an additional meaning to that. Okay, so a person in his Grihastha life might be performing these sacrifices to fulfill his material needs. Okay, so that will be his purpose at that point. But when he comes to the stage of Vanaprastha, and Aranyakas give more explanation, saying, although you are performing all the sacrifices, but actually they were meant to please Lord Vishnu. So your focus should change now. It is not to fulfill the necessities of your life, following the Karmakanda ritual, fulfilling your desires, but actually it is meant for something more. So therefore it's Upasana Kanda. So it gives additional explanations and are considered as supplements. Upanishads are specifically meant for sannyasis, and it deals with Jnana Kanda, knowledge section dealing with the absolute truth, and reveals only the absolute truth. They impart the most confidential knowledge of the Vedas. So Upanishads are the only portions which reveal the absolute truth and its different features. Normally, when we say Upanishads are Jnana Kanda, it's a generalization, because Upanishads speak about all the three aspects of the absolute truth: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And we will see in our discussion of Ishopanishad that all three are being discussed. Okay, so Upanishads, although they are called as Jnana Kanda, but actually they reveal all the three features of the absolute truth and lead the person who is following the Upanishads to devotional service. Okay, and it's specifically called as Jnana Kanda because this is the time when one understands that this world is a miserable place to live, and therefore one should inquire about the absolute truth, about spiritual reality, that which is eternal, that which is full of knowledge, and that it gives ananda. whatever he has observed or whatever he has gone through, experienced in karma kanda rituals is, although it gives material benefits, it's not sat, it's asat. The benefit is there for some time and then it is lost. And it's not full of knowledge because it is all material and it does not give ananda. Some amount of happiness is there, but it's not ultimate happiness. So one should inquire in the human form of life of something more. Although I have been engaged in all these karma kanda rituals, but then it does not give me eternal happiness. It does not give me eternality. So therefore, when that inquisitiveness comes, when one has to apply his intelligence to understand that he is suffering this material world, even the portion of the Vedic literatures are not sufficient enough to take me or give me ultimate happiness. I should then, that person contemplates and resorts to Upanishads. So that is why it is called as sannyas. It is meant for sannyasis like this. Sannyasis are those who have given up anything to do with material. Okay. And the ultimate sannyas, as discussed in several places in Bhagavad Gita, is one who worships the Supreme Lord, one who engages in devotion service, one who is not attached to material, fruitive work, or one who is not attached, one has given up fruitive work or attachment to fruitive results. He is the perfect sannyasi. Correct? So Upanishads are meant for those who are or who desire to achieve the absolute truth. So Rig Veda, there are 21 Samhitas, 21 Brahmanas, Aranyakas and Upanishads, and Valakilya Samhita is one of the Samhitas. These are just some details. Purusha Sukta, the famous Purusha Sukta comes in Rig Veda. Then this Aitareya Brahmana, Sankhyana Brahmana, Aitareya Aranyaka, and Upanishads are Aitareya Upanishad, Krishna Upanishad, and Muktika Upanishad. Then there is Yajurveda, which has again two different branches, Shukla Yajur and Krishna Yajurveda. And there are different Samhitas and Brahmanas. So I mentioned this Vajasanayi Samhita is Shukla Yajurveda. Maitrayana Brahmana is Krishna Yajurveda. Shatapatha Brahmana, very famous, is Shukla Yajurveda. And Ishopanishad is Shukla Yajurveda and it is a part of Yajurveda. Yes. So Ishopanishad is Shukla Yajurveda. And there's a reason the story is mentioned in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam of how the Yajurveda itself got divided into Shukla Yajurveda and Krishna Yajurveda. If you remember, Yajurveda is propagated by Vaishampayana. And Vaishampayana had a disciple, Yajnavalkya. And due to some reason, Vaishampayana, he became displeased with Yajnavalkya. And he said that I will not teach you Vedas anymore. You can go out from this Gurukul. I will not teach you anymore. So when Yajnavalkya, he said, Yajnavalkya was actually proud. He thought that he is more knowledgeable than all the other disciples of Vaishampayana. So because Vaishampayana saw the pride in Yajnavalkya, he said, now you cannot remain here. You are supposed to be humble in Gurukul. Then you are proud that you are the most. And when Yajnavalkya started to go out, Vaishampayana said, whatever you have learnt, you give it to me and then you go. So you should not take any knowledge from me because I am displeased with you. So Yajnavalkya, whatever knowledge he has gained, he vomited that knowledge. Okay. He vomited that knowledge and then that knowledge was taken by the other disciples of Vaishampayana in the form of partridge bird, what's called as titri in Sanskrit. Okay, it's partridge, it looks like a dove. So they took the form of the dove and they eat all the remnants which Yajnavalkya has vomited. And it was black in color and all the disciples ate that. So that portion of the Vedas which Yajnavalkya vomited, that is Krishna Yajurveda because it is black. So after this, Yajnavalkya, he went out of the Gurukul, but he wanted to gain that knowledge which even Vaishampayana did not. So for that purpose, he worshipped Suryadev, sun god, and then he recited so many prayers. Those prayers are also there in Srimad Bhagavatam 12th canto. And after this, Suryadev became very pleased with him, and then he manifested. He appeared for Yajnavalkya, and he said, "What do you want?" So Yajnavalkya said, "I want to know those portions of the Yajurveda which even my spiritual master does not know." And because Suryadev was very pleased with him, he revealed that knowledge. He gave that knowledge to Yajnavalkya. So that is revealed by Suryadev. So therefore, that portion of Yajurveda is called as Shukla Yajurveda or White Yajurveda or Golden Yajurveda because it is given by Suryadev himself. That's why Taitareya Samhitas, even Taitareya Samhitas are Krishna Yajurveda because the disciples took the form of the three bird and then they accepted it. So Taittiriya Aranyaka is Krishna Yajurveda, but Shatapada Brahmana, Vajasaneyi Samhita, and Ishopanishad, they all come under this Shukla Yajurveda. Taittiriya Upanishad is also Krishna Yajurveda. Okay, that's how it is divided. And Ishopanishad was revealed by Suryadev to Yajnavalkya. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the famous Upanishad, is revealed to him like this. And Shvetashvatra Upanishad was taught by Vaishampayan to Yajnavalkya. Okay. Samaveda, we have Chandogya Upanishad and Chandogya Brahmana and Chandogya Aranyaka. The famous ones come under Samaveda. And Kena Upanishad also is in Samaveda. In Atharva Veda, there is this Shaunaka Samhita, Gopata Brahmana, and then this Prashnopanishad, Narsimha Takuni Upanishad, Atharva Upanishad, Chaitanya Upanishad, which was revealed by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It is under this Atharva Veda, and all the Aranyakas of Atharva Veda are lost. So, Itihasas and Puranas are the fifth Veda. As we discussed, because the Vedic literatures, most of it is lost, so therefore Itihasas and Puranas are considered as authoritative to reveal the absolute truth. So Jiva Goswami does that analysis. We will not have time to go through that complete analysis. So for further information, you can definitely refer to Tattva Sandarbha. So in Samaveda, in Chandogya Upanishad, it is mentioned that the Itihasas and Puranas are the fifth Veda. And in a purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that the Veda was divided into 4 divisions of sacrifice just to purify the occupational service of 4 orders. Right? We discussed Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Samhitas, and Upanishads. They pertain to different ashramas. So different ashramas have different occupational duties. Okay. So just to purify these occupational duties, the Vedic literatures were divided. And above the 4 Vedas, namely Rig, Yajur, Sam, and Atharva, there are the Puranas, the Mahabharata, and Samhitas, which are known as the 5th Veda. Prasthanatraya. So Srila Prabhupada explains, according to learned scholars, there are 3 different sources of knowledge, which are called Prasthanatraya. Therefore, the Vedanta Sutra is known as Nyaya Prasthana. Upanishads are known as Shruti Prasthana, and the Gita, Mahabharata, and Puranas are known as Smriti Prasthana. All scientific knowledge of transcendence must be supported by Shruti, Smriti, and a sound logical basis, Nyaya. The Vedic literatures are understood through these 3. The knowledge is gained. The knowledge of transcendence is gained through these 3, Shruti, Smriti, and Nyaya. And this set of 3 is called as Prasthanatraya. And according to Vedic culture, any acharya who wants to establish his philosophy based on the Vedic literature, he has to write a commentary on Shrutis, on the Smriti, and on Nyaya, on Vedanta Sutra. And only then, if his commentary is consistent throughout, because Vedic literatures means, we saw these 3 different categories, Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, and Jnana Kanda. But to establish a philosophy, these 3 should be coherent in nature. These should go along with each other. Shruti, Smriti, and Nyaya. So when an Acharya comments on the Shrutis, and he comments on the Smriti, and he comments on the Nyaya, and makes a coherent message, a unique message, then his philosophy is established. So Shankaracharya, he did that. Shruti, he commented on the Upanishads, on 11 Upanishads. And Smriti, he commented on different Puranas. And for Nyaya, definitely his Sharirika Bhashya is there, which was his commentary on Vedanta Sutra. And by that, he established his Advaitavad, Shuddha Advaitavad philosophy. And to negate that, to oppose that, Ramanujacharya, he established his philosophy. Okay. Although he himself did not comment on any of the Upanishads, his disciple, Ranga Ramanuja Muni, he commented. Okay. And then he established the Vishuddhadvaita. Vishishtadvaita. Vishishtadvaita. He established the philosophy of Vishishtadvaita. And Shri Bhashya was written by Ramanujacharya to oppose Shankaracharya. So then he established his philosophy. Then Madhvacharya came, he commented on 10 of the Upanishads. Just to defeat Shankara's commentary on 11, he commented on 10 Upanishads. He commented on all 11, I'm not sure. Then he commented on all 11. He commented on all 11. I think Baldev Vidyabhushan only commented on 10. So he commented on all 11 to defeat the philosophy of Shankaracharya. And then he also wrote 4 commentary on Vedanta Sutra, different perspective, unifying the Dvaita Siddhanta. So similarly, different philosophers, different acharyas, they establish their philosophy, their understanding of the Vedas, their philosophy by commenting on these 3, which is called as Prasthana Traya. Shruti is that which has been heard. Shabda means sound vibration and Shruti means oral reception. So out of 3 processes, Pratyaksha, Anumana, Shabda Pramana, or receiving vibration, sound vibration from authorities by oral reception, that is considered to be the perfect. So Shruti normally is said to be these 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda and Atharva Veda. And then he says, no, Vedic injunction means cannot argue, we have to accept it as it is. And we simply have to hear and act accordingly. It is Vedic. Smriti is that which has been remembered. Smriti means if you are a learned scholar in the Vedic injunction, if you have heard from bona fide source, and if you are convinced, and then if you write something, that is Smriti. So we assimilate the knowledge from Shruti, from Shabda Pramana, and then we write something based on our realization or that knowledge which is revealed within the heart by the Lord. So that which one writes is called as Smriti. You cannot write nonsense. You have to write something which corroborates with a Vedic injunction. That is called Smriti. That's why Itihasas and Puranas, they are historical narrations. Ramayana, say, was written by Valmiki, and Mahabharata was written by Vyasadeva. Historical narrations, but they are in line with what is the actual purpose of the Vedic literature. So therefore, they are coming or they are categorized under Smriti or Shruti. Shruti means the word, the intonation or the language itself does not change. But in Smriti, that leeway is there. So the language can change a little bit, grammatical intonations can change a little bit. That leeway is there in Smriti. But because the Smriti is completely dependent on the Shruti, both are authentic. One should not think that because Shruti is coming directly from the Lord, Smriti is something which will have a human author, therefore is Paurusha Shabda, and it can be affected by the 4 effects. But no, Smriti directly follows the purpose of the Shrutis. So therefore, whatever is given in the Smriti is also authentic, it's also complete. And we will see how Puranas, which are the Smritis, they actually complete the meaning of the Vedas. Puranas are mentioned in the Shruti itself as a commentary of Vedic literature. Puranas are the commentary on the Shrutis, the specific statement that is mentioned. So therefore, one completes his learning of Vedic literatures by learning the Puranas also. Nyaya. Brahma Sutra means the whole Vedic knowledge is given in quotes. Brahma Sutra Padaishchaiva Hetu Madbhihi. Hetu, we discussed yesterday. Hetu is the cause, the reason. So whatever is mentioned in Vedanta Sutra, then it has a cause behind it. Why is it so? Nyaya means logic. Nyaya means there are 3 kinds of authority: Shruti Prasthan, Smriti Prasthan, and Nyaya Prasthan. So Brahma Sutra is Nyaya Prasthan, very logically given. So Shruti is meant to reveal the absolute truth, Smriti is meant to reveal the absolute truth, and Nyaya is meant to reveal the absolute truth. There is no difference of purpose. Okay, so this is. Okay, so we see Prasthanatraya. It is Shruti, Smriti, and Nyaya. And within Smriti, we have the Puranas, which includes 18 Mahapuranas, 18 Upapuranas, Itihasas, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Dharma Shastra, Manusmriti, and Parashara Smriti. And there are other Dharma Shastras also, Abhastama Sutra, like this. So Dharma Shastra regulate one's life. So they also come under basically injunctions of how a person should lead his life. These Dharma Shastras gave injunctions for the 4 Varnas and 4 Ashramas. What are the duties of Brahmanas? The duties of Kshatriyas, the duties of Vaishyas, the duties of Shudras. What are all the injunctions, the occupation duties that a Brahmana should follow? The occupation duty that a Vaishya should follow. Sorry, occupation duty that a Grihastha should follow, Brahmachari should follow. Then a Vanaprastha and a Sannyasi. What are the duties that are supposed to be occupation duties that are supposed to follow? That comprises your Dharma Shastra. And there is Vedangas, Shiksha, Chanda, Vyakarna, Nirukta, Jyotisha, and Kalpa. So Vedangas are those set of Vedic scriptures which are helpful or which are the tools to understand the Vedic literature. Okay. So Vyakarna, grammar. So once you understand grammar, then we can make sense of the Vedic literatures. Jyotisha is at which time the specific Vedic literatures should be chanted. Kalpa is what are all the rituals that one should perform on which time. Right? So different injunctions are given. So these are called as Vedangas. And Chanda is different meters. There are different chandas, different meters through which, by which, using that particular meter, a particular Vedic mantra should be recited. So they are the tools which support the Vedas. And there is Upavedas. Ayurveda is coming from Rig Veda. Dhanurveda comes from Yajurveda. Gandharva Veda comes from Samaveda. And Artha Shastra comes from Atharva Veda. Okay. So these are Upavedas because they are not meant actually for leading one to the highest goal, to the highest knowledge which is available in Vedic literatures. So therefore they are called as Upaveda. They support one's material necessities, and once one's material necessities are satisfied, then he can pursue his spiritual necessities, his spiritual life. So therefore they are called as Upavedas. And the writings of the Acharyas, they also come under the category of Smriti. Okay. Shruti, there are 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sam, and Atharva. And Nyaya is these 6 Shad Darshanas, 6 philosophies of Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Yoga, Sankhya, Karma Mimamsa, Jaimanis, and Brahma Mimamsa or Vedanta or Uttar Mimamsa, which is propagated by. So Srila Prabhupada writes about 14 books of education. And he says there are 4 Vedas, 6 supplements, then this Vedanta Sutra, books of knowledge, books of philosophy, and the Puranas. And of these, the book which presents Adhyatma Vidya, spiritual knowledge, in particular the Vedanta Sutra, it represents Krishna. So 4 Vedas are this, 6 Vedantas are Shivas, and Upangas or Puranas, Nyaya, Mimamsa, and Dharmashastra. They together comprise the 14 books of knowledge. Srila Prabhupada speaks about this in the Bhagavad Gita. I think it's the 10th chapter. 10th chapter. Okay. Then there are poisonous philosophies which are nourished from the Vedas. Okay. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary writes that just as poisonous fruits are also produced by drinking water from the Ganges, those trees which are on the bank of Ganga, they drink. They are nourished by Ganges water, which is supremely pure. But what do they produce? They produce poisonous fruits. Similarly, those who are atheistic or demoniac utilize their association of Vedic knowledge to produce the poisonous fruits of atheistic or materialistic philosophy. So one who says or one who establishes that the purpose of the Vedic literatures is to remain happy with this material world, it's actually poisonous philosophy because that is not the purpose of the Vedas. How to accept the Vedas? The Vedic evidence statements are self-evident. Whatever they state must be accepted. To interpret according to our own imagination, the authority of the Vedas is immediately lost. So we should not interpret. We should accept the Vedas as it is, as it comes to us through bona fide disciplic succession. And why Brahmanas are glorified in the Vedas? Because they preserve unwritten Vedas in the original form. Vedas are propagated, it's Shruti, right? So Vedas are propagated by the Brahmanas reciting it and their disciples learning it just by hearing it. And over a period of time, all these Vedas are, much of it is lost, but whatever has been preserved by those Brahmanas who are very diligently or very faithfully following the Vedic injunction. So they safeguard their tonal and verbal purity. And so many rules are there to make sure that not a syllable was changed in chanting and not a swara was altered. Therefore, the Brahmanas are very dear to the Lord because they have this responsibility of maintaining the purity of Vedic literatures. So then there is a special section called Pancharatra Agama. Now, these Pancharatra Agamas are spoken directly by the Lord himself. Okay. Okay, so there are different meanings. Pancharatra Agamas are basically Vaishnava Tantras which deal with 5 subjects. Okay. And there are different 5 subjects which it deals with. Primarily, Srila Prabhupada writes that 5 rishis. He writes Pancharatra Vidhi is the method of temple worship, and Bhagavata Vidhi is the system of 9 processes which begin with hearing and chanting. The Krishna conscious movement accepts both processes simultaneously and thus enables one to make steady progress on the path of realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, different rules and regulations which are connected to devotional service is what is given in Pancharatra Vidhi, and this is what is called as Vaishnava Tantras, or Pancharatra Agamas. So the 5 rishis headed by Narada wrote the Pancharatra to teach the people about practical devotional service, how to perform devotional service, that is taught in Pancharatra scriptures. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is himself the speaker of the Pancharatra philosophy. O best of kings, the Pancharatra philosophy is seen as the best of all the philosophies because it reveals the Supreme Lord. Now, just for reference, it is mentioned in different Shastra that it is called as Pancharatra because Lord Keshava is said to have taught this esoteric science to Ananta, Garuda, Vishwaksena, Brahma, and Rudra over 5 nights. So he gave this knowledge of Pancharatra to these 5 personalities over 5 nights. That is why it is called as Pancharatra. Another meaning is when it is taken Ratra as wisdom or as knowledge. So it speaks about 5 things. It speaks about Tattva, about the absolute truth, about cosmology, that's one, and Mukti. It speaks about how one can attain liberation. It speaks about Bhakti, how one should render devotional service. It speaks about yoga, how to control the mind and senses. And it also speaks about the mundane subject matters of fulfilling one's desires. So because these 5 are subject matters of Pancharatra, therefore they are called as Pancharatra. And another meaning is that it explains about the 5 aspects of the absolute truth about Sri Krishna. First is the highest. It speaks about Krishna. Then it speaks about the Chaturvyuha. Shankarshana, Vasudeva, Aniruddha, and Pradyumna. It gives the details. Srila Prabhupada writes about this in his Chaitanya Charitamrita commentary that the 4 vyuhas, the explanation about the 4 vyuhas and the process of their worship is fully explained in the Pancharatra Agamas. So vyuha is explained. So the Supreme Lord, then the vyuha, then his incarnations. How to understand the incarnation of the Supreme Lord? What is their position? On which all times do they come? All those details are also given in the Pancharatra. Then they speak about the Paramatma feature of the Lord and the deity feature of the Lord. When Prabhupada writes that Pancharatra Vidhi is for deity worship, it's because one of the features of the Pancharatra scripture is speaking about the deity who is non-different from the Supreme Lord. So because these 5 different aspects of the Supreme Lord is being discussed in these scriptures, they are called as Pancharatra. And this is spoken directly by the Supreme Lord himself. So there are different meanings. And all of these are included. These different meanings, all of these are included within the Pancharatra. We speak about all these 5 subject matters. And there are different Pancharatras. Narada Pancharatra is the most important for us, Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Apart from it, Srila Prabhupada also quotes the Shandilya Pancharatra and Hayashirsha Pancharatra specifically. And there are others also, Kapila Pancharatra, Prahlad Pancharatra, and Vaihayasa Pancharatra. And our devotional service should be authorized based on the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra. Pancharatra within Vina, Aikanti Harir Bhakti, Utpata Eva Kalpati. It only creates disturbance if we do not follow the Pancharatra. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada, he writes, for the Krishna consciousness movement, we have these 4 scriptures, Bhagavad Gita as it is, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So these 4 corresponds to the Shruti, Smriti, Nyaya, and Pancharatra. So that's why Srila Prabhupada said these 4 works are sufficient for our preaching purposes and also for our advancement in Krishna consciousness. Right? They are adequate for understanding the philosophy and spreading the missionary activities all over the world. For the Shruti is Bhagavad Gita. All the Bhagavad Gita comes in Mahabharata. Okay. And it should be categorized as Smriti, technically speaking. But because it is spoken by the Supreme Lord directly, Krishna himself speaks, therefore for us it is the Shruti. because it is the words of the Lord. And Nyaya is Srimad Bhagavatam, which is commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, most authentic commentary on Vedanta Sutra, because it was compiled by Srila Vyasdev himself. Then Smriti is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, written by Krishna Kaviraj Goswami. Okay, so it's the authorized writing of a Acharya, the pure devotee of the Lord. So Smriti is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Pancharatra Agama is nectar of devotion. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Hari Bhakti Vilas, then others, Narada Pancharatra, these are all Pancharatra Agamas. And for us, specifically, in our line, Srila Prabhupada has given us a commentary or a summarized study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of how to perform devotional service. What are all the rules one should perform, or what rules one should follow? What are all the yama, niyama, what should not be done? The rules of devotional service, the 64 limbs of devotional service are all explained in Nectar of Devotion. So this is Pancharatra. Itihasas and Puranas. So Puranas provide a firm foundation for all the Vedas. Of this, there is no doubt, given in Narada Purana. And Srila Jiva Goswami writes, the authoritative sound of Vedas is impossible for anyone in present times to study completely. Its meaning is difficult to understand. And even great sages who have explained it in commentaries disagree among one another. For these reasons, we would be well advised to turn our attention to the Shabda Pramana of the Itihasas and Puranas. There are sages who have also written commentary on the Shruti, on the actual 4 Vedas. Okay, but just like Vedanta Sutra is perfectly explained in Srimad Bhagavatam because it is written by the same author. Similarly, the Vedas are divided by Vyasdev, and then he only compiled the Itihasas and Puranas. He knows the purpose of the Vedic literature. Therefore, Itihasas and Puranas are actually the perfect commentary on the Vedas. Just like Srimad Bhagavatam is the perfect commentary on the Nyaya scripture, which is Vedanta Sutra. And in Shruti itself, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it's mentioned that Itihasas and Puranas are the breath of the Supreme Being. So they are also on the same category of Shruti because they also come from the breathing of the Supreme Lord. And one should complete the Vedas and Itihasa. One should complete the study of the Vedas with Itihasa and Puranas. Purana means, one meaning is that it's history. Okay, Purana means that which is bygone history or a long period of time. History which is compiled, or that which happened a long period of time, that is explained in the Purana. And Purana is also derived from Purna, which completes the study of the Vedas. That's why it's called as Purana. The Itihasas and Puranas are the 5th Vedas. There are some more references. And the essence of all Vedic literature and all histories has been collected in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam is the essence of all Itihasas and Puranas, and is also the essence of all the Vedas. Sarva Vede Itihasanam Saram Samudridam. So of all the Vedas, Sarva Veda and Itihasanam, all the Smritis also, this is collected, the essence is collected in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the perfect pramana because Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun. Krishna is a Bhamo Bhagate, Dharma Adivisa, Kalau Nashtadarishamisha, Purana Bodhanodita. This is the glory of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now we are kind of moving fast here. Srila Jiva Goswami, he spends lots of time in establishing how Srimad Bhagavatam is the perfect pramana of all the Shabda Pramanas. But we are coming to the conclusion that in this age of Kali, one shall get light from this Purana. So one thing to understand is, it's not that only in this age Srimad Bhagavatam is special. Srimad Bhagavatam is special in all the ages of all the Vedic literatures because it directly speaks about Krishna. And specifically in Kali Yuga, because there is no other way to gain transcendental knowledge. There is no other way to attain the absolute truth. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam becomes even more special. It's already very special, then it has its most prominent place in Kali Yuga. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless authority on everything according to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Anam. So we have been discussing about Pramanas from last 3 days. So of all the Pramanas, Srimad Bhagavatam is top. So finally, now this is the last section of our discussion. We have discussed till this point of what actually is the perfect pramana to attain the highest goal of life. So the perfect pramana, we went through different phases of how we can gain knowledge. Okay, there are different pramanas, of which Pratyakshanumana Shabda is considered to be the authentic or valid ones. Then Pratyaksha we discussed to some extent, and we saw what is the validity, where in which all cases it's valid, or in which all cases it does not work properly. Then we discussed about Anuman Pramana. Okay. Then we see its pros and cons. And then we have a discussion about Shabda Pramana, which is basically the Vedic literatures. And we saw the divisions within the Vedic literatures, and we established that Shabda Pramana is the actual perfect way of knowing the absolute truth, because Supreme Lord himself created it and he is revealed through the Vedic literatures. And Vedic literatures have these different divisions, and these divisions are further explained perfectly in the Itihasas and Puranas. And of the Itihasas and Puranas, the perfect Pramana is Srimad Bhagavatam. And practically, for rendering devotional service, which is the ultimate goal of all Vedic literatures, the Pancharatra Agamas are also given to us. So this is the discussion we have had till this point. And all these things will work, or we can implement, or we can accept all these things, or it will work only when these are accepted, the Vedic injunctions are accepted from a bona fide guru, when the disciple is dedicated to his spiritual master. So we will see some of the quotes or some of the references from Srila Prabhupada's writings of how to understand the Vedas. One must approach a guru, and the Vedic knowledge is revealed to us only when we are sheltered or when we surrender to the spiritual master. Otherwise, just by reading the Itihasas, just by reading the Puranas, one cannot attain the perfection. So tad vijnanartham sagurum eva vigachet. So one must approach a spiritual master. Not that you purchase one book from the market and you become a Vedantist. No, that is not possible. Tad vijnanartham sa gurum eva abhigachet. Must go to understand. Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya. So understand the Vedic knowledge to attain the highest goal of life, to render devotional service, one must approach a spiritual master. There is no other way. Okay. And tad vijnanartham, to attain this transcendental knowledge. Tad vijnanartham, vijnana artham. To attain this transcendental knowledge, one must go. Abhigachet. It's definitive. Transcendental sound. Who cannot receive the Vedic message? Those who are entangled in sense gratification and mental speculation, and whose heart is covered by material dust, cannot directly receive the transcendental Vedic message. Okay, so purification, just only by purification of the senses and the mind. And when we become free of material contamination, then we can receive the transcendental Vedic message. Otherwise, it's not possible. If you cultivate material desires, then receiving the transcendental message of the Vedas is not possible. Krishna says, Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yoga Maya Samavatah Mudhoyam Nabhijanati. So the Lord is never manifested to the fools because he is covered by his internal potency. So one must become intelligent and take shelter of the spiritual master. Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya. And only by that the Lord will reveal himself. Ananya chetaha sattam vyomam smarati nityashah tasyaham sulabha patha nitya yuktasya yoginah. Read Bhagavad Gita. So Ananya chetaha sattam, one who without any deviation, Ananya chetaha sattam vyomam smarati nityashah, who remembers me nityashah all the time, tasyaham sulabha patha. To that person I am very easy to attain, because he is nitya yuktasya yogina, because always attached to me in yoga. He is always in conjunction with me. He is always with me. So the Lord reveals himself by devotional service. But those who cannot understand, who cannot surrender to the spiritual master, who remain foolish, the Lord is always covered by his internal potency. They cannot understand him. To whom Vedic knowledge is revealed? Yasya deve parabhaktir, yatha deve tatha guru, tasya dekadita hyartha prakashante mahatmana. Onto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. So one should have faith in both the Lord as well as the spiritual master. It's not that one or the other, but they should have faith in both. Lord can be known only by devotional service. No kind of material qualification is the means for satisfying the Supreme Personality of God. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, only by devotional service can the Lord be known. Tyamam abhijanati. Unless the Lord is pleased by the service of devotee, the Lord does not reveal himself. Unless the Lord is pleased, then the Lord does not reveal himself. How is he pleased? He is pleased when his devotee is being pleased. When his devotee is served, when the spiritual master is served. No? Krishna says, Acharya ma vijanya navamaniha dharchit. So one should serve him, for to serve the spiritual master. And then the Lord is pleased. So it's not that one can please the Lord directly, because we do not have the qualification to approach the Lord. That is why it is said in the Vedic scriptures that Krishna comes in the form of the spiritual master. Krishna is not different from the spiritual master, or rather, spiritual master is not different from Krishna, because the spiritual master is an external manifestation of the Lord. And when the external manifestation of the Lord, the spiritual master is served, then automatically Krishna is served and he becomes pleased. That is the only way of knowing the Lord. This is the verdict of all Shastras. So neither by speculation nor by material qualification can one understand or approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, there is a popular conception that if you know Sanskrit, you know the Vedas. But you might get into this technical nitty-gritty of the Vedas, but Vedas will not reveal themselves. Vedas will not reveal the actual purpose of why they exist to a person who resorts only to his Sanskrit knowledge to understand it. To understand the Vedas, one must have faith in the spiritual master. One must surrender to the spiritual master. Otherwise, the Vedic knowledge is not revealed. Just by Sanskrit scholarship, the Vedic knowledge is not revealed. It's descending process, avaroha pantha. It's not aroha pantha. When you think that by understanding, by getting a knowledge of Sanskrit, by becoming a Pandit, I can understand what is given in the Shastra, then what we are doing is we are basically resorting to aroha pantha, trying to understand something which is transcendental to our senses by our own material qualification. But Vedic knowledge itself is avaroha pantha. It must come from top to bottom. So our Sanskrit qualification, Sanskrit knowledge is actually not a qualification to understand the Vedas. To understand the absolute truth. The absolute truth must descend himself. The Lord must will that he should reveal himself to this prospective devotee. Then only he is revealed, or else no. So Lord reveals himself as the spiritual master, Ashraya Vigraha. Out of immense compassion, personality of Godhead reveals himself as the spiritual master. And it is worthwhile to take shelter of such a steady devotee who is called as Ashraya Vigraha, or the manifestation or form of the Lord of whom one must take shelter. So Paramatma, Vedas and Guru. Srila Prabhupada in one of his lectures said, Shastra Guru, spiritual master. Shastra Guru and Atma Rupe. And sometimes he comes himself as the Paramatma or the Super Soul. He is giving you instruction from within as Paramatma. He is sending you suitable spiritual master. So you can have instruction without. Within as Paramatma, and without means outside. Externally he manifests as a spiritual master. And the books are there, the scriptures are there. The most important process of hearing is from the Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, spiritual master, saintly Acharyas and the Vedic literatures. So this is the threefold process which we use to establish, to understand the Vedas. Krishna is adokshita, beyond this perception. But through the Shastra, we can understand a little bit of Krishna. It's very difficult to know. We cannot understand Krishna, it's unlimited. We are limited. Still, whatever limited power we have got, we can understand Krishna if we follow the Shastra, Sadhu and Guru. Sadhu, Shastra, Guru, Vakya, Chittite, Kariya, Aikya. Narottam Das Thakur writes this. So the spiritual master must be satisfied with the disciple. And only then knowledge automatically manifests for the student of spiritual science. The process should not, however, be misunderstood to be something like magical feats, whereby the spiritual master acts like a magician and injects spiritual knowledge into his disciple, as if surcharging him with an electrical current. This is in reference to one of the popular gurus and his similarly popular disciple who had an exchange of transcendental knowledge by a magical feat. Okay. And the guru lost all the knowledge and the disciple gained everything. So Srila Prabhupada is saying this is not the way to gain transcendental knowledge. The spiritual master must be satisfied with the disciple. And if the spiritual master is satisfied with the disciple, then knowledge is automatically manifest in the heart. And the instances are also there in Mahabharata, in Adi Parva itself, when this Guru was there and he has different disciples, Upamanyu, then Utanka, and Aruni. So by serving their spiritual master, the spiritual master blesses them. Because I'm very satisfied with you, therefore all the imports of Vedic knowledge will be revealed to you. So he did not sit and teach them at all. Just by being pleased by the disciple, the Vedic knowledge is automatically manifested within the heart. Okay, and even what to speak of these disciples, even Lord Brahma had to undergo tapa. Right? When Lord Brahma was created, or when he manifested, or when he came out of his lotus flower, what did he have to do? He saw all around in the darkness, he could not find anything, and then instruction was given to him. 2 letters, tapa, perform austerities. So Lord Brahma then performed tapa, and by that Krishna became satisfied, and then he revealed himself to Lord Brahma. So this is the way of transmission of knowledge. Knowledge is manifested only by satisfying the spiritual master. And for Lord Brahma, Krishna himself is the spiritual master, and he revealed the knowledge within the heart of Lord Brahma, and then he propagates that knowledge all around the universe. Okay. So the bona fide spiritual master reasonably explains everything to the disciple on the authorities of Vedic wisdom. The disciple can receive such teachings not exactly intellectually, but by submissive inquiries and a service attitude. The idea is that both the spiritual master and the disciple must be bona fide. So it's not that knowledge can be gained only by those who are intellectually capable. Okay, that is not the way of gaining the Vedic knowledge. Vedic wisdom is gained by submissive inquiries and a service attitude to the spiritual master. Again, this, this verse we discussed. The 4th chapter. Yeah? We discussed this verse, right? Just now we saw this verse also. Where one has to go to approach a spiritual master, inquire him submissively. What are the words are? Tadvidi pranipatena, tadvidi pranipatena, pariprashnena sevaya, dikshanti te jnanam, jnanina sattva. So Krishna does not say that one must be intellectually very capable to understand tattva. He's saying tadvidi pranipatena, pariprashnena, sevaya. These are the 3 things which are required. Not a very big brain to understand all kinds of different philosophies and so many things. So these 3 things are important to understand tattva, the absolute truth, not intellectual prowess. Okay, so finally, mercy of the spiritual master. Srimad Bhagavatam has recognized Vedic wisdom, and the system of receiving Vedic knowledge is called Avaroha Pantha, or the process of receiving transcendental knowledge through bona fide disciplic succession. For advancement of material knowledge, there is a need for personal ability and researching aptitude. But in the case of spiritual knowledge, all progress depends more or less on the mercy of the spiritual master. All spiritual progress depends only on the mercy of the spiritual master. So this is the Abhideya, this is the final conclusion we come after studying for 3 days this Vaisnava Epistemology, that we have to surrender to the spiritual master. We have to please him. Then all the Vedic knowledge is manifested automatically within the heart. So progress in spiritual life, the highest goal, happiness, which this is how we started this presentation. The goal of life is to attain happiness. Happiness is prerogative of human being. He should be inquisitive to understand that knowledge which will lead him to the highest happiness, which will lead him to the highest goal, which will give him happiness which is uninterrupted and which is permanent. And then we went through a complete analysis of the different pramanas and so many other things, and finally we conclude that if we get a bona fide spiritual master, we are extremely fortunate. And what we are supposed to do is render service to him. And by that, whatever is auspicious, or whatever is the most auspicious, all auspicious, not say most auspicious, all auspiciousness arrives only by rendering service to the spiritual master. Everything is gained by the mercy of the spiritual master, because spiritual master is non-different from the Supreme Lord. Right? Sakshat Nityena Samasta Shastre Uktisatha Bhavideva Sadvihi. So he is non-different, and that's what is proclaimed in all the Shastras also. Okay, so with this I conclude this Vaisnava Epistemology section. Tomorrow we will be starting with the invocation of Sri Ishopanishad. and then we'll go through each of the mantras every day. Okay, so sorry? Yes, yeah. So this Vaisnava Epistemology class is basically derived from the introduction that Srila Prabhupada writes, that Srila Prabhupada gave. It's actually a lecture which was given in 1969 by Srila Prabhupada about introduction to the Vedas. And then he explains some of the details. We saw it in an elaborate manner. So the introduction you please read, and then invocation also. The introduction and invocation of Sri Vishnupriya, you please read and come tomorrow so that it will be easier for you to follow what we discuss in the invocation. And just a reminder that you will have to submit your letter of instruction essays by 31st. So today is 30, correct? Today is 29. So 2 more days from today. Please do so. Okay, any questions? Any comments? Anything? Yes. Yes. Okay, so the question is that Srimad Bhagavatam is we say it's a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, which is the Nyaya scripture. But in Srimad Bhagavatam, we do see, we inherently or directly, we do not see that just like in Vedanta Sutra, there's Purva Paksha, there's Sutra, then there's the different conclusions. Exactly Nyaya, we can see Pratigya, Hetu, all those things can be directly seen in Vedanta Sutra. But in Srimad Bhagavatam, we do not actually see that. But then Srimad Bhagavatam is the commentary on Vedanta Sutra. So how do we understand this? So Srimad Bhagavatam is presented in the form of Smriti or Purana. Although it's a commentary on Nyaya, the presentation is in the form of Purana. So the subject matter of Vedanta Sutra is fully discussed. All the 554 sutras, I think, they are there in Vedanta Sutra. They are all discussed in different verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. But because it takes the form of a Purana, therefore it is not logically structured that way. You know, in Pratigya, Hetu, and all those things will not logically find in Srimad Bhagavatam because the structure itself is that of a Purana. And Puranas in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's mentioned that these Puranas and Itihasas are applicable or present or can be used even by the Dvijabandhus, Shudras and Stri. Stri, Dvijabandhu and Shudras, they cannot directly access the Shrutis, but the message of the Shrutis can be directly accessed by the Puranas, through Srimad Bhagavatam. So because in cage of Kali, we are all not on the level of the exalted Brahmanas who were there in the previous ages. We are all on the level of Dvijabandhu, Shudras or even lower. So for us, we do not have the qualification to approach Vedanta Sutra directly. We do not have the mental capacity to understand Nyaya directly. So the same Vedic message takes the form. Vedanta Sutra, when we say Vedanta Sutra, it's the Anta of Vedanta, it's the conclusion of Veda. The essence of Veda is there in Vedanta Sutra. But because of our disqualification in the age of Kali, we cannot approach Vedanta Sutra. So then it takes the form of Purana, in the form of stories, historical narrations. And the same message is then given in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So although the message is there, but it does not have a structure of Nyaya. But all the explanation of Nyaya is there within Srimad Bhagavatam. A study was made sometime in the 20th century, sometime early 1900s, I think 1920 or 1930s, where a scholar, he gave for each of the Vedanta Sutra, each of the Sutra, he gave a corresponding verse which relates to in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. I forgot the name of that book. So for each of the Vedanta Sutra, there is a corresponding verse which explains that point. Okay, and all the 554 sutras have a corresponding text in Srimad Bhagavatam. So this was done, and Suhotra Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada's disciple, according to Srila Prabhupada's purports, he refined that, and then he added few more verses, and he modified some of the more verses based on the translation purports of Srila Prabhupada, and he has given for each sutra which it refers to which verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so if we actually want to get into those details, then we can refer to his work, where each of the sutra is has a corresponding Srimad Bhagavatam verse. So it will not be in a structured manner, just like Vedanta Sutra say 1.1.1 is this sutra. I'm just giving an example. And then 1.1.2 is this. And then it flows a logical manner. But then Srimad Bhagavatam, because it is taken the structure of a Purana, historical narration or narration of in a story format, the corresponding verses will be from different cantos. The first sutra will be from a different canto, second sutra might be from a different canto in a different chapter, or within the same canto but in different chapters. But all the points have been addressed. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is more accessible to us. That is how we should understand. That anything else? Okay, so stop. Srila Prabhupada ki